What's up? Welcome to the Sweat here on a Friday morning. And my friends, the madness, it is underway. 16 men's basketball games yesterday across this glorious country to start round one, and 16 more today to fill out the field of 32. I think we can all agree there's really no better place to watch the tourney than a sports book. And that's exactly what our guy Julian Edlow has been up to out in Las Vegas. Are you surviving out there, bud? You doing okay?
This is my element, Kaufman. This is my specialty. Watching March Madness and sports books. Not necessarily winning, but just being there and watching.
You don't look any worse for the wear. You seem to be all right. Early hour there, you had to get up for this thing.
You're not a sleeper, Kaufman.
I'm
You're
not
awake at all creepy hours of the night. And when you get out here, the time change. I'm all over the place.
Listen,
we don't need to sleep.
They don't
later.
feel like creepy hours until you actually classify them as creepy hours, and then it makes you wonder what you're doing. All right, yesterday, one top 10 lost with, of course, the 15-seed St. Peter's, shocking 2-seed Kentucky in overtime. You have 7 of the nation's top 12 in action today, including a top-seed Arizona. So are you sensing any upsets? And, of course, of that magnitude, and if not, is there a 14, a 15, a 16 seed that you think can cover the spread?
I don't think we ever sense upsets of that magnitude. That was like a top 5 tournament upset of all time. I had Kentucky playing in the final in my bracket. That's not going to work out anymore. But that said, like a 14 that can beat a 3, it has to be Colgate. I don't know if I'm going to play the money line, but like 7.5. They lost in the tournament last year to a more athletic Arkansas team. Now they're playing a slower, more methodical Wisconsin team. I think they can hang around in there. We'll see if they can actually win it. But no, I think Kentucky's going to be the upset of the tournament. It would be silly to say we're going to see anything even similar to that.
So it's not just you. We have Colin Sherwin from DK Nation, one of the editors there, joining us as well. Colin, I can only imagine that you were just a little bit tardy because you spent, all of your earnings invested in Kentucky, and you just didn't sleep last night.
Actually, I was at the drugstore buying tissues for my board from yesterday. Just a brutal day. If you were sort of considered, I don't know, a swear better, yesterday was probably manna from heaven. For those of us who like to think that we've found like better ways to bet on these things, not a good day at all. I think there are upsets coming in this tournament. I don't know about anything that we're going to see like Kentucky that happened yesterday. That's just sort of an outlier, and everything had to come together in the right place at the right time. Kentucky was up 8 with 3 minutes to go. They're never supposed to lose that game. So try not to extrapolate too much. And all games are independent, so don't think, there's so many upsets yesterday, there's going to be more today. That's not necessarily how this works. I think yesterday was just sort of one of those historic days that you may never see again. So, or at least not anytime soon. So, I'm staying away from anything crazy from happening today. But just try not to get too out of whack after what happened yesterday.
All right. Well, as we've acknowledged, 15 seed winning or a 14 seed winning, obviously a 16 in the very rare times that's ever happened. That is crazy. What's not crazy is when you see a 12, an 11, even a 13. So, Colin, is there a potential upset on the money line that you've got your eye on today? Any more 11 or 12 seed magic after we saw Richmond, New Mexico State, Michigan, they all won yesterday?
Yeah, I think there are some opportunities today. If you wanted to take a swing at a much bigger possible money line win, I think Chattanooga is going to be able to hang around with Illinois for a little bit. It's just a matchup problem for Illinois, who tries to run everything through the middle. Chattanooga should be able to get some opportunities out on the wings. So I think Chattanooga could be an opportunity to knock off a higher seeded team. Otherwise, I think it's kind of an unusual pick, but Colgate was in this tournament last year, has a lot of the same players that were a part of their run last year. They get a Wisconsin team that's not playing their best basketball right now. The problem with Colgate is last year in the tournament, they just got absolutely blown out in their first round game. I don't know if they've learned anything from that, or if that experience and sort of being in the exact same position in 2022 will help them compared to 2021. So I kind of like Colgate at plus 270. And I just think Chattanooga has a chance, just with the way that they play at plus 280, to possibly steal one.
Jules, those two games that Colin just mentioned, they both have pretty similar spreads, 7.5, 8 points. Is it one of those that stands out to you as well, or is there something different?
Yeah, both of those are in my best bets article, and I'm going to play plus 7.5 with Colgate. I'm going to play plus 8 with Chattanooga. I don't know if I'm going to have any money line for either. I do think they're potentially winnable games, but I'm just going to stick to the spreads on those. I guess there's some shorter dogs that I do think can win and technically upsets in brackets, 10 and 11 seed, and that being Miami over USC. They're getting 2 points there. USC has a lot of length, but what Miami does is they play everybody on the perimeter. So they will make USC's length matter less, and they have really good guard play, which is great in the tournament. So I haven't bet either yet, but like Miami plus 115 on the money line. Again, really short here, close to a pick 'em. And Virginia Tech is getting 1.5 points as an 11 against a 6-seeded Texas squad that just doesn't have it. They got the talent, they got the coach, but they can't win. They're like the Lakers of college basketball to a much smaller degree. So Virginia Tech, coming off that ACC championship, that's the only red flag. Like, they're riding high, so this could be a letdown spot for Virginia Tech. But I do lean that way against Texas.
Do you have a favorite, staying with you, Julian, favorite program to cover the spread today? Obviously, I mean, there are some wide favorites. There are some really big spreads. I mean, Texas Tech, Auburn, Purdue, Villanova, obviously Duke in Coach K's farewell. You've got Arizona, the top seed. Any of these, teams that are favored by at least 15 points that you really like, or just somebody else?
In terms of the big favorites, if I do anything, it's probably going to be maybe Purdue first half or a Purdue first half team total or something to just come out and be all over Yale that, barely got in by, winning their conference championship last second. Purdue hasn't covered a spread in months. They're 0-9-1 against the spread in their last 10 games. They were brutal against the spread this season, but they should come out and be all over Yale in this game. So I might back them first half or something. I did that with the Zags yesterday. It didn't work. Got it back in the second half. I hope it doesn't go that way today, and they just come out and take care of business.
Yeah, it was Zags like plus 30 in the second half or something like that. Colin, what do you think? Favorite team to cover the spread?
Yeah, for the bigger favorites, I think Arizona can just do whatever they want with Wright State. It's just going to be a matter of how much they want to blow teams out. I was here, actually, I'm wearing the shirt. I was at the Pac-12 championship game, and you can just tell the amount of talent that Arizona has. It is a very, very deep team that can play 1 through 5, that can shoot 1 through 4. They just sort of do everything that you need in the tournament, and that's being able to win in multiple different ways. They're going to be able to pick their number today. It's just, will they want to pick a number higher than 22? I think they will. So I like Arizona to cover. Of the biggest spreads, that is the biggest spread on the board today, and I do think the Wildcats get there.
Colin, most game totals for today are in the 130s. No real surprise there. You have a couple of huge ones that are sitting up in the mid-150s. Any totals that interest you?
The totals for me in this tournament have been so difficult because the officiating has been just there was some really, really questionable officiating yesterday, and I think that's just such a major factor in who wins in totals. It seems like they're letting a lot go for players in the post, but if you continue to put the ball on the bounce and get to the rim, you seem to be getting a lot of calls. Totals are all about how the game is officiated. Villanova, I kind of like under 135 here because just the way they match up with Delaware, I think that game could really be a slog. The winning team might be in the very low 60s. So if I was to target an over-under today, it would be Villanova. But again, I would say keep an eye on the way the whistles are calling these things for the totals, because I think that's going to be the most important factor. If you can find some second half totals out there, depending on how the game is being officiated, that's something you might want to keep an eye on.
How about you, Julian?
Yeah, I'm not really much of a totals better. So when I am, I'm looking for like a specific matchup and maybe even a team total. So I mentioned Purdue team total, either full game or first half. They just kind of need to break out after poor Big Ten play. I say poor Big Ten play. They made it down to the wire in the championship game, but it was considered poor Big Ten play by them. So I think they come out and score a lot on Yale. And then the other one, LSU going up against Iowa State. Iowa State can't score. So I don't know how they're going to score against a good athletic SEC team. So their team total under, I'll look to go there. They scored like 36 points in their last game or something. They are not putting the ball in the basket, which is the objective of the game.
We need your slate-approved picks, guys, and then we'll get you poolside again for a couple hours before the action starts again. Jules, favorite bet on the day 2 of the tournament here?
I mean, my slate-approved pick is that I'm going to be in Vegas for like 5 days, and I'm not even going to see the pool because college basketball is on the entire time. But I have 3 best bets today. I'm rattling them off for you. Here you go. Loyola in a pick'em. Loyola Chicago to win. LSU -4. I think they're going to hammer Iowa State, like I just said. And Colin and I talked about this one. Alabama first half -2. They're going against Notre Dame. Notre Dame is coming off that double overtime win in Dayton, flying out West Coast, playing an afternoon game. I love Alabama first half.
Jules knows better than to bet against Sister Jean, Colin.
Yeah, I like all Julian's picks here. I'm a little trepidatious about LSU. I think he's right on talent. If LSU shows up, they're certainly a +4 or -4 there is great. The problem is that they don't have a coach right now, and it's just going to be how they respond internally as a team. Do they care? Do they want to be there? If they do, they will blow the doors off. I also want to add TCU to that list. I think TCU is just going to run away and hide today. Just a really good team. 2 teams going in opposite directions. Seton Hall is just, has sort of been middling the last 2 months in TCU. While they're only 4-4 in their last 8, in 7 of those last 8, they've played a top 15 team in the country. So I really like TCU here. I think that's a good one. Also, keep an eye on Jacksonville State first half. Just a matchup thing. Jacksonville State starts really well. They just fall apart in the second half. And Auburn starts slow and tends to play really well in the second half. So you get an 8.5 there. I kind of like Jacksonville State to hang around and get everybody go eye raised at halftime and go, oh, Jacksonville State. And then they get blown out in the second half. But take them first half.
Guys, I was just looking this up. You remember the baseball movie 8 Men Out? Sister Jean was alive when that actually happened in real life.
That's right, 1919.
That's unbelievable.
You would be looking that up, Kaufman, at the creepy hours of the night that you're awake.
No. I just looked it up while you guys were talking. All right, great to see you both. Be safe. Say hi to our friends at VEASAN, obviously. We've got baseball next. Stick around. All right, we're back on the sweat, and after a 99-day lockout, baseball is back. Players are on the field. Spring training games got started yesterday. It's a beautiful sight. The sounds of summer are coming, folks. DraftKings contributor Steve Buchanan's here with RotoWire's Eric Halterman to break down the latest moves and their fantasy and sports betting impact. Bukes, it's been a few days since we've had a chance to talk about this stuff. Some big moves this week, obviously. Freddie Freeman to the Dodgers, because, of course, unlimited money there after a long stay in Atlanta. You have Chris Bryant, fat deal from the Rockies, don't really know their direction. Matt Chapman landed in Toronto. Which player's fantasy potential increased the most?
From a fantasy perspective, Bryant playing half of his games in Coors Field can't be overlooked. But over the course of the entire year, the move for Olsen over to Toronto can't be overstated. I mean, they're getting a Gold Glove caliber first baseman over there, somebody who's going to be in a really good lineup. I mean, we could say he was in an okay lineup, maybe an average at best lineup in Oakland. He is going to be surrounded by prolific hitters over in Toronto. And this is somebody who was hitting close to 40 home runs a year over in the AL West. Now he's going over to the very hitter-friendly AL East and everybody, all those parts that they have there. He's going to be approaching 50 home runs this season. So I think overall, I think he's the guy.
Eric, is it Bryant for you as well or somebody else?
I mean, Bryant has to be the low-hanging fruit, right? I don't know why the Rockies thought they were one Chris Bryant away from contention, although I'm never going to get mad at a team for making moves in that direction. We all know how hitter-friendly Coors Field is. I think there's not too much detailed analysis we need to do there. His stock goes way up. Another one, though, that we should mention that you didn't touch on is Kyle Schwarber moving to Philadelphia. It's not quite Coors Field, but it's a top 5 hitters park, and it's a pretty good lineup, at least at the top, hitting near guys like Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto, and now maybe Nick Castellanos, according to some rumors. Apparently the Phillies thought that Kyle Schwarber wasn't enough bat, and they don't actually decide to ever add defense, so they might just add another Kyle Schwarber. If that's the case, all those Phillies hitters look quite good.
How do these moves, Eric, impact some of the clubs that lost a player? And obviously, they're sportsbook markets. For instance, are you more likely to maybe fade Austin Riley's 31.5 homer total, or fade all the A's markets now that Oakland lost Marte and Chapman and Olsen?
I wouldn't really touch the homers because those are pretty much an individual stat. Obviously, if your team's offense is so bad that you don't get to come to the plate as often, sure, but I don't think Atlanta's going to be very different now that Matt Olson's in there instead of Freddie Freeman. Not a very significant change there. I would fade the A's, except the problem with that is there are no A's. Last I checked on the DraftKings Sportsbook, there are no A's hitters that you can take homer or RBI bets. I don't think there's any for hits either. I mean, nobody out there is excited to bet on Chad Pinder, I guess. I can't imagine why. You could certainly fade the A's pitchers in wins, except the issue there is the A's pitchers may not be A's pitchers for very long when they're tearing down everything. So I guess it's a bit of a hit to Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea, but I can't say I'm more than 60% sure that they'll be A's by opening day, let alone the trade deadline.
Bukes, obviously same question, but I'll add to that. I mean, are there just some bets affected for players that lost key personnel this offseason that really jump out at you?
Well, the thing that about the A's is that, like, you probably missed a ship on that already. On Monday, their win total for the season was set at 79.5. It's down to 71.5. I mean, that's a massive move. They were talking about, close to 10-game difference in the span of a week that we're talking about here. So you most likely missed the boat on that one there. And just talking about those A's pitchers, we don't even know who's going to be on this team come the All-Star break. We've already heard trade rumors for Montas. We've already heard trade rumors for Sean Manaea. These guys are going to be out the door. This team is in a rebuilding mode. The A's are now last in the odds to win the AL West division. They're not going to be anywhere close there, but this is a team that was in third at the beginning of the week. All these moves have just absolutely decimated their markets there. So fading everything to do with the A's is the play, but quite frankly, that ship has sailed already.
Most of the significant player movement, Bukes, this offseason has happened in the batter's box, whether before the lockout or since. All due respect to the Max Scherzers of the world. But let's talk pitching. Any movement that's changed your thoughts on Cy Young futures?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I look at the numbers for Lucas Giolito, and the White Sox haven't been overly busy, but he's someone that I think at 11-1 odds is a really strong play in the Cy Young department. He had a couple of rough starts during the season. That one in Boston on Patriots Day, the Detroit Tigers of all teams roughed him up a couple of times. But this is someone who strikes out over a batter an inning, doesn't walk a lot of guys, doesn't give up a lot of home runs, and we project another strong season from the White Sox. They are the most resounding favorite to win their division in the American League. I believe it's minus 210 coming into today. So you have someone like Lucas Giolito who should be atop of their rotation there in a division that isn't overly strong. That AL Central division is not strong by any means. Yes, some teams have made some moves. The Twins made some moves. The Tigers made some moves, but the White Sox should be able to dominate that division once again. That should be some good things for Lucas Giolito. So look at him for 11-1. I think those are some pretty strong odds there.
Eric, Matt Chapman, who we were talking about before, he's a hell of a defender. Could that lead you to maybe sprinkle a little bit on Gausman plus 1,800, Berrios plus 2,000? What do you think?
I can definitely see the logic there. I don't think those guys are steals at their prices, but I think they're perfectly fairly priced. I think both of those guys are very solid mid-range options. If you're looking a little cheaper, sticking with the White Sox, Michael Kopech, we know he's got the stuff to win one day. If you could get Michael Kopech 2024 Cy Young odds or something, I'd be very interested in that now. I don't know if he'll have the innings this year after throwing just 69.1 last season, mostly in relief, but he's got the stuff if you want a long shot. And the guy who seems the most exciting to me is Julio Reyes at plus 3,500. I just don't know why he's in that range. He's just far more talented than most of the guys you're finding in the plus 3,500 range. I think a plus 2,000-ish would seem much fairer for him. Had a 2.96 ERA last year. No innings concerns. He made 32 starts. And of course, with the Dodgers signing Freddie Freeman and having, a lineup that some people are talking about as one of the best we've ever seen in baseball history, he's going to get the wins that some voters still care about. So I think he's probably the biggest value in either league right now.
The Rangers were big spenders way back in December for anybody that can remember, Eric. They're plus 10,000 after the Simeon and Seager signings. Don't have any Cy Young candidates on the roster, so I realize that's not going to help out the offense, obviously. But, are Texas odds longer than you would expect? I'm looking here at the DraftKings Sportsbook, the wins total. It's 74.5.
Yeah, I love what the Rangers did. I think teams should be saying, you know what, we're just going to move in the right direction now, and we're going to make a lot of moves in that direction. Good for them. They needed two off seasons like this to really get in contention. Plus 10,000 is what, a 1% implied odds. If you look at the playoff odds at Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus, they're at 0.1% and 0.0%. So according to that, they're still, being treated better than they are. The Cubs are kind of similar. The Cubs didn't add quite as many big names, but Marcus Stroman and Seiya Suzuki, who I think is quite a big addition, they're also at the same plus 10,000. And again, Fangraphs Baseball Prospectus think that they're 0.2%, 0.1% likely. But both of those teams, the way that playoff odds really work is they're showing your roster now. But if either of those teams is in the mix come the trade deadline, they're going to add pieces, and it's going to be a better roster than they are right now. So if you like very long shots, again, I don't think it's likely that either of those two teams wins, but I think both of them are equally interesting at the very bottom of the board.
Bukes, I know there's no team in the AL West you love more than Seattle, but do you have any respect for Texas?
Look, Texas is going to score maybe 8 runs a game. They're going to give up about 19 runs a game with that pitching staff. When John Gray is the anchor of your rotation, you still got a long way to go, buddy. There's still a lot of pitchers that need to be, brought into this team to become competitive. The Mariners at plus 450, that's just a sham, okay? The reason that the Angels are in front of them is downright disrespectful. So I will happily take plus 450 for the Mariners. Quite frankly, I already got them at 6-1 when Oakland was, quote-unquote, still in contention. So we're doing good over here. But the Mariners, the third best odds to win that division is absolutely atrocious. They have all these new players on that team, some serious power. They brought in the reigning Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray, who's probably going to win it 5 times in a row now in Seattle. And they still have a plethora of prospects who are major league ready and haven't even taken the field yet. So right now at plus 450 for the Mariners, you missed 6-1. That's okay. Still got some good odds to take at plus 450. That's the team you're going to take right now.
Do you have an M's tattoo yet?
No.
All right. Soon enough. All right, you guys are all done. Enjoy the weekend and all the baseball coming our way. The sports carousel, it continues. Hockey is on the other side of this break. Stay with us. All right, time for a little hockey talk with my man Paul Bruno from RotoWire. It's the NHL Opening Face Off. Paul, how's it going?
Good, Adam. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. We're going to go position by position. You know how this works for DFS. First, of course, we begin at center. Who stands out to you?
Well, you go to the top of the board, Adam, and you look at the two guys that are the headliners. For 9,200, you can get McKinnon. He's got 9 goals, 63 shots on goal. I think that's the highest 10-game segment of anybody that I've seen all year long. Barkov, for his part, 3 goals, 16 points, 32 shots on goal for $800 less. I'm going to fade both of these guys, though, and save a little bit of money. I like Lindholm in Calgary for $7,000. He's got a nice matchup against Buffalo tonight. He is on the hottest line in the league over the last 2 months, I'll say. 14 points and 28 shots on goal, averaging 15.7 DK points per game in his last 10. I'd rather go there than the other two big boys. And then if you want to save some more, even more, You go to Kuznetsov in Washington. He's centering for a guy named Ovechkin, whom you may have heard
of him, yeah.
Got 5 goals, 12 points, and 27 shots on goal, averaging 13.4 DK points in his last 10. There's good value there.
You know, if you're going to save a little loot, Nazem Kadri's in a good spot.
Yes, he is.
If we're looking at the wing now, yeah, I don't think you need to save here necessarily, or at least not dramatically. You know, at highest, you know, obviously a guy like Ovechkin, he's 8,100, and you can always justify him. He always has the potential to go off. But I don't know, Mikko Rantanen, I know you're a big fan of him. He's right there at the top of the board in terms of projections, but great spot.
Yeah, that's a great spot and a great matchup for him tonight too. And if you're happy with him, go right ahead because it's good value there, a good high floor, I think. But you got to make the case for Ovechkin. Carolina's on the second of back-to-backs, and the Caps are scoring against everybody of late. Ovi's got 45 shots on goal in his last 10 games. Not something you want to discount when you're looking at trying to make a big hit in DK points. And then if you don't like those two big plays for the top money, go a little bit lower, not too much, and you look at the guys that are facing each other, Pasternak and Connor. In the Winnipeg-Boston game, I kind of shy away from those kind of matchups. I expect a low-scoring game there, but those two guys are on fire and tempting too. Instead, I'm going to go just a tad lower than them and look at Matthew Tachook for Calgary. He's on that same line as Lindholm, $6,900 the price tag, cheap when you consider he's facing Buffalo, and he's on a roll with 15 points in his last 10 games played. And also, you got to like Sam Reinhart for Florida against Anaheim. The Panthers have to be smarting from a defeat against Vegas last night. I don't know how that happened. I watched the game, and Florida looked as bad as they have in a long time. I expect a big bounce back. They'll have Bobrovsky in the net, too. I think they're going to be all over Anaheim tonight, and Reinhart will be a big part of that for $5,000.
Aside from Cale Makar for Colorado tonight, looks like defense is really more value position. What do you think?
I agree with you. I'm going to fade the big boys tonight. You certainly will blow your brains out on Makar and Ekblad. That'll limit your opportunity to buy some forwards too. So no small consideration. Instead, I like two guys I've touted a lot over the last past week. They've delivered very recently. I'm talking about Devon Taves in Colorado. He's got 8 points and 27 shots. Don't forget the 16 blocks in his last 10 games. That's a high floor of 12.7 DK points. I think he's going to top that tonight for $5,800. And then Rasmus Andersson, a guy who has quietly taken over the power play quarterback role in Calgary, and he's got 10 points in his last 10 games played. Don't forget his defensive prowess as well, 17 blocks, and he's averaging over 10 points in DK play over the last 10 games slate and costs only $5,000 tonight.
Whenever we're together, Paul, we like to play this game, value. I shout out a couple options. You tell me why I'm wrong. I'm going to go in a different direction. Here we go. How about you could do Adam Gaudette, good spot for Ottawa, Tyler Ennis as well. And but the one I like best, how about Max Comtois? What do you think?
I like all three of those picks, but I'm going to give you three other ones that I like a little bit more, okay?
Please.
Tyler Toffoli's been great in Calgary since he joined them. 6 goals, 6 assists, 33 shots on goal in his last 10 games played. That's a 14.4 DK average, and that's only going to cost you $4,800 tonight. Then I go back to Ottawa. I know you touted a couple of guys. How about Conor Brown? $4,600 for a guy who's playing first-line minutes on the right wing again. 7 points, 28 shots on goal in his last 10 games, facing a Philly club that's on the second of back-to-backs. It was an emotional night because they celebrated Claude Giroux's, likely his last game in Philly, also the 1,000th of his great career. I think there'll be a bit of a letdown in the Philly dressing room tonight. And then Zegras in Anaheim. We haven't talked about him for a while, and he's playing first-line minutes in Anaheim. Obviously, a highlight reel waiting to happen against the Florida club on the second of back-to-backs. This could be a high-scoring game, and he only costs $4,300 for a guy who has 30 shots on goal in his last 10 starts.
Over on the DraftKings Sportsbook here, Paul, you've got, I don't know, is there a favorite goal total for you beyond? I mean, we always, it feels like, have that standard 5.5 in the NHL, but is there one that really jumps out at you tonight?
You know what? We've talked about the overs a lot. I'm going to give you one that stands out in that direction. It's Washington and Carolina. I saw Carolina against the Leafs last night, and their offense was a little bit off. I think they're going to have to be a little bit better tonight against another good team at home tonight in Washington. And I think the goals are going to come like crazy. And I think I'm going to hit the over hard. The line of 6 is not very flattering. It's a minus 115 payoff. I go a little bit higher. Even a half puck should get you into the plus side of that bet. And I like that. And I'm also tempted to go on the underside of the Florida-Anaheim game. Florida's going to be looking to tighten things up defensively, and Anaheim's just not scoring too much against anybody of late. So I think they come well under the 6.5 on the under there.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm just looking at it now. We don't have our NHL standard 5.5 tonight. Every game is either 6 or 6.5, so we're expecting plenty of offense tonight in these games. Do you have a preferred money line or puck line bet?
You know what? I'm going to try a couple of puck line bets tonight, and I'm looking at two teams that really light it up offensively. Colorado minus -1.5 at San Jose. They've been giving up a lot of goals all year long. They're minus 1.5 to get that number. And then Florida minus 1.5 at Anaheim. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think Florida's going to be well ahead of Anaheim in this one and worth the plus 110 bet on that one.
Pablo, my man, always great to hang out with you. We've got much more on the way. Football, NASCAR. In fact, we're going to keep those two sports together because they're just so similar. That's next on The Sweat. We're halfway home here on The Sweat, and despite everything happening in the sports world, professional hoops and hockey sprinting to the finish, March Madness, baseball's long-awaited return, excitement on the track, even on the links, you name it, the NFL has consistently, daily reminded us that at every turn, football is king. And lately, there has been enough news to make even Tom Brady's return from retirement a boring story. DK contributors Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich are here with us. NFL spin move is where we're going to begin, guys. Aaron Rodgers, he's back with the Packers, of course, that's not new. But he has lost his favorite and most reliable target, Devontae Adams, reuniting with his college QB, Derek Carr, in Las Vegas. And the Raiders, they've also added Chandler Jones from the Cardinals on the defensive side. So Las Vegas' odds to win the AFC West, they've jumped from plus 1,000 to plus 700. Pierce, we start with you. Would you be surprised if the Raiders actually supplanted the Chiefs in the West?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, sure, they added a couple players. That's great. That's nice. But the last time when these teams faced off last season, the difference was pretty wide. The Chiefs destroyed the Raiders. And yeah, Adams is a great receiver, but that gap between these two teams is pretty significant. And look, the Chiefs have been on top for quite a while. They're going to remain on top. We tried to say that they were done last season, and that didn't really pan out. The Chiefs just win. They're going to keep winning. The Raiders are fine. They're better, but they're not nearly close to the Chiefs yet.
So apparently, Jeff, not a team does a couple players make, basically?
I mean, I'll take a little bit more of an optimistic look at it than Pierce. I mean, look, it is the NFL, right? I mean, anything can happen. And when you put an elite, I mean, people calling Derek Carr elite, they're probably going to laugh at me, but it's a pretty solid combo with Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, right? We saw what Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford did last season. I mean, they essentially carried their team to a Super Bowl. Now, the problem with the Raiders is that it's not just the Chiefs that they have to worry about. Like, if you're betting on the Raiders to win the division, I mean, now you have to go through Russell Wilson and this stacked Chargers team. So could the Raiders do it? I mean, I take the optimistic look at, I definitely think that they're at least live. Like, I think adding Chandler Jones adds a factor in their pass rush that was something they really needed to address. So that's positive. And I just think that Derek Carr is a little bit better quarterback than people realize. And maybe he's not quite at the level of Matthew Stafford, but I don't think he's necessarily that far behind either. So I think this Raiders offense could surprise a lot of people. And I think they will be able to keep up in games with the Chiefs. But they're going to need not only Chiefs regression, they're going to need like the Broncos to start slow or just have troubles. And they're going to need the Chargers maybe to go through some growing pains. So it's a long road for the Raiders to get to the division title. But I think at the very least, they've put themselves in the discussion for me because I'm very interested to see how this offense is going to run. This offense was a lot more efficient than people realized last season. When you throw a guy like Devontae Adams in there, I mean, the arrow is only pointing up for the offensive capabilities of the Raiders right now. So,
Well, look, we don't have time to talk about it right now, but I'm borderline shocked that Green Bay is still sitting third in the DraftKings Sportsbook in terms of Super Bowl favorites at plus 850, losing Devontae Adams and not getting anything back, and Aaron Rodgers with no one reliable to throw to. But, we'll get there another point, obviously. Deshaun Watson, more QB news. We know he's not going back to Houston. The expectation, he will land in either New Orleans or Atlanta. Both those teams plus 2,500 on the DK Sportsbook right now. If you wanted to, wager a guess basically on where he's going to land. Jeff, can either club with Watson compete with Brady's Buccaneers in that division?
I mean, look, the Saints have absolutely owned the Buccaneers over the last few years. I mean, yeah, the Bucs obviously have gotten the title and they got the division win last year, but it's not because they were dominant against the Saints. The Saints defense has been extremely good at shutting down Tom Brady. For the most part, obviously there's that one division loss, but no, I mean, I think I wouldn't be going out to bet either one of these teams with Deshaun Watson, but I do think that both Atlanta and the Saints have a little bit better of a chance, much like the Raiders, and probably people realize. The Falcons went out and added Casey Hayward on defense, really addressing the cornerback position. They still need to get some kind of pass rush inside, but perhaps that can be addressed with the draft. I just think that Deshaun Watson is going to add a factor here on offense that both teams have kind of been sorely lacking over the last couple of years. You have two dome teams, in their heyday, what did they do? They used to put up points. They just used to outscore their opponents. That potentially is going to be back on the table for either one of these teams next season. So, no, I think that this division is actually going to be a little bit more competitive than people realize. Can Tom Brady just come in and pick up right where he left off at the start of last year? The Buccaneers, they've been really good the last 2 years, but they didn't really look too good in going out in the playoffs last year either. I think Deshaun Watson's going to make whichever team he goes to very competitive. I think plus 300 right now is a little bit shorter than I'd like on the DraftKings Sportsbook. I'd much rather, if Deshaun is going to Atlanta, get like a plus 400 number, but it's something to keep an eye on because I think wherever he goes, that team is certainly going to compete next year.
With Jeff's guy Carson Wentz gone, you've got, of course, a Colts team really with kind of no quarterback right now, Pierce. Do you think Indianapolis is rooting for Watson to land in Atlanta so at least Matt Ryan becomes available?
Sure, that's fine. If Watson goes there, then they get Matt Ryan. They pick because Ryan will get cut, so you can sign him. But look, let's say he doesn't go there. Let's say he goes to Tampa, or goes to New Orleans. Well, then Jameis Winston becomes available. I'd much rather have Jameis Winston than Matt Ryan. And then going to the first question, I don't think Watson helps either one of these teams. I think it's going to be marginal. Maybe they go to a 500 team. Why would you do this? They're not going to compete. I hate to be the pessimistic person here, but let's just be real. Neither of these teams are going to beat the Buccaneers this season. So why mortgage your future to get Watson to get to maybe 500 and take all the baggage that comes along with it? Why not just take your sub 500 a year and build for the future? You're not beating Tampa this season.
He's 26, Pierce. He's 26. They're obviously looking ahead. I think they realize they can't compete with the Bucs next year, but they're saying 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when Tom Brady finally retires, potentially, we'll be the kings of the division. So Pierce is probably right. It's probably the Bucs division next year, but
it is.
Jeff, do you believe that Pierce actually hates, being the negative guy, however he phrased it?
No, he definitely doesn't hate it. He loves it. He gets up and he says, who can I put down today? And
wakes up and chooses chaos. It's the kind of guy Dietrich is. All right, to me, a big story we haven't spent nearly enough time on, not just on this show, but in life, on Twitter. Allen Robinson from the Bears to the defending champion Rams. I recognize Robinson was not all that great last year, and obviously he was banged up, but he wasn't the guy he was the two previous seasons when he's out there leading the NFL in targets. But the Rams, they've already got Cooper Kupp, in theory Robert Woods, Van Jefferson. They could have Odell Beckham Jr. back eventually after his injury. He's indicated, at least prior to this, that he wanted to re-sign there. Could this, Jeff, be an all-time offense?
I mean, let's just add on to that. The division next year, I don't think it's going to be nearly as good as this division has been in past years. Seattle is just going to be, I think, a dumpster fire, and I don't really think Arizona is going to be any good. So I think the Rams just have the potential to maybe even beat up on a couple division opponents next year. Yeah, this offense is going to be good. It's time we got to give, McVay and Stafford and Cooper Kupp a little bit more credit here. I mean, they did it last year, despite, Pierce and I calling for them to eventually get beat. But I think they're going to put up numbers at the very least. Bringing Allen Robinson in is smart. And now, look, Robert Woods is still there too. I mean, that's the thing that he's just like the forgotten dude. Robert Woods was a very productive receiver a few years ago. I think there's a good chance they move on from Robert Woods and he doesn't start the season there, but you've still got Robinson with Van Jefferson. This offense is going to be just as dynamic as it was last year, and they still don't really have like a superior runner of the ball either. So you're going to see Robinson get a lot of targets. So I think that for fantasy purposes, Cooper Kupp's probably not going to have the greatest season on earth like he did last year, but he's going to be very solid. Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to be a very solid fantasy play. And Allen Robinson coming in, playing that Odell Beckham role. He's kind of a better possession receiver than Odell Beckham anyways, and he's probably going to get a few more targets. So I think this is a very good spot for Allen Robinson to land. We'll see what they do end up doing with Woods and Beckham. There's a lot of moving pieces still here, but for right now, the Rams, you can pencil them in for just another solid offensive year for sure. Go
ahead, Pierce. Try and find something negative to say about this offense.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive, but I can't do it. Yeah, there's a lot of negative things here. You got Andrew Whitworth retiring. The offensive line was shaky at times last season. The run game wasn't very good. And so you could say, well, that means they're going to pass more, but that also means you're going to have more of a less balanced attack, and defenses can key in on pass coverage. So that's going to be a problem. You've got too many mouths to feed from the receiving perspective. And then also, Allen Robinson is probably, when we talk about excuses, I don't know of any receiver we've made more excuses for ever. Oh, well, if he just had a good quarterback. And then we say, oh, well, if he just had a better every single season. How many times, are we going to say that? Are we going to put up with that? I don't know. I think he'll make the team better. I don't think he'll be interesting at all in terms of fantasy. His best days are probably behind him.
It's the exact same thing he said about Odell Beckham, by the way, who went and scored like a touchdown every game with the Rams. So
look at his numbers. He did hardly anything last season. He did. Look at his numbers.
Showed out all right in the playoffs. He was okay.
Are you crazy? Are we watching the same games? It was Cooper Kupp that won those games. It wasn't Beckham.
I will admit,
I'm not saying he won the
MVP.
I'm just saying he scored like 8 touchdowns in like 10 games. It's pretty good. I mean.
Yeah, if you like scoring, Jeff.
Yeah, if you like touchdowns and fantasy points, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
OBJ going to L.A., it made a lot of sense, especially with his contract expiring. Allen Robinson with a multi-year deal in this offense, he could get lost. It's weird. But whatever, another time. Let's go to NASCAR while we've got you guys here. And the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 is in Atlanta this weekend. And Jeff, I know you like your Buick LeSabre. We don't have time to talk about that. What's a top 10 bet that you do like this week?
A top 10 bet? Yeah, let's go right there. I mean, you look at, obviously, the NASCAR, the odds. I mean, we're not getting like huge odds to take top 10 on a lot of the top players, but I think you can look at a guy like Ross Chastain at minus 110. I mean, he's driven really well to start the year. I mean, last week overcame a 17th place start to battle for the lead at the end of the race. I think he ultimately finished second last week. So, or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. Anyways, this guy's driven really well to start the year. And I think Chastain is a player or a driver, excuse me, just got golf on.
He's like a player.
At minus 110, he should be live for a top 10 here. He's driven really well to start the year, and you're getting decent odds on him, a lot better than a lot of the other top drivers. So
a player, a driver, same difference, Pierce. Top 10 bet you like.
So Jeff picked up on something. The odds are kind of strange this week, and that's because no one knows what to expect from this race. They repaved the track. They put in new banking. It's completely different. This could be a plate race, kind of like Daytona or Talladega, where we see a bunch of wrecks and these underdogs come through with the top 10. And if that's the case, then I like David Reagan at plus 700 to get a top 10. You've got Corey LaJoie plus 350, Michael McDowell plus 150. Those guys are all really good plate racers. In a normal race, their odds for a top 10 should be much longer. But the sportsbooks seem to think that this will be a plate track race. We'll know Friday afternoon after practice if that's going to happen. But you can lay these bets now.
Pierce, staying with you, is there a long shot that you like this week?
Noah Gragson at plus 9,000. If this is a plate race, then anyone is in play. He has a plate track win in the Xfinity Series. He's going to be in a colored car. It's a pretty decent car. They've had pretty good plate equipment. Again, this is kind of depends on if this is going to be a plate race or not. We'll find out in practice how it races, because right now we only have computer simulations to determine this. But Noah Gragson or any of these long shots are an interesting play.
What about you, Moose?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, they changed the track up a bit. At Atlanta. So there's a lot of variables. I'm not as like I definitely didn't dive into the guys as deep in the odds as Pierce did, but I feel like at plus 1600, Martin Truex, just with his previous finishes at Atlanta, has to be someone who's going to be live at plus 1600. It's not massive odds, but 6 top 5 finishes in his last 11 races at Atlanta, 10 top 10 finishes. I mean, his average just finish place here is better than 7th. I think Martin Truex Jr. is probably someone who at least is live at plus 1600. There's so many variables with this one though, because I don't even know if like the previous Atlanta form is going to come into factor. Or like Pierce said, it's just going to be a completely different race. So it all depends on how you're looking at this race this week. It feels like I think there's a couple people like above plus 1,000 that you definitely feel live, but this could work out in multiple ways. I think Truex Jr., just with his history at Atlanta, you've got to give him at least a little bit of credit for that. And I think his odds are, at the very least, a little bit bigger than they should be. So,
Jeff, we need your pick. Who's going to win the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500?
All right, well, I'm going with another, like, not semi-long shot, but I mean, Tyler Reddick. I mean, this dude's just raced really well to start the year, too. I mean, he led the most laps at the Auto Club 400, and then he had a flat tire. He did back-to-back top 10 finishes, 3rd place last week. He just looks ready. This dude like just signed a contract, I think, Pierce, if I'm correct. And so, I mean, when you sign the contract with the company, what do you want to do? You want to show off for that company. I think it's a good spot for him. He's just, his pace, his car's going well. He's pushing the pedal to the metal, right, Pierce? Give me Tyler Reddick at plus 1600 to win this race.
Every possible cliche he could throw out, pedal to the metal. What do you think, Pierce? Who's your winner?
Well, to connect to Jeff's world, imagine you have a golf course, you drop a nuclear bomb on it. Now, do you rebuild the same golf course or do you build a completely different golf course? That's the question that we're looking at with Atlanta. Is it the same Atlanta or is this a completely different track? We don't know. So guess what? You play a guy like Denny Hamlin, who is good at plate tracks. He's also good at the regular intermediate tracks. So you just got to live that hedge life with Denny Hamlin.
We've got one segment left on this show. We're going to let these guys go. One thing left to discuss at that, and that is pro basketball. Look around the association coming up next, guys. Thank you. Stay with us. 12-game slate in the association tonight, so of course we want to identify which guys to start our lineups with, and we'll begin at the guard position here. Matt, we'll start with you. There are a lot of interesting options. Certainly Luka Doncic is at the top of the list, DeJounte Murray, Trae Young. These guys, they're all in good spots. Who do you like?
So I think that there's a team that you basically have to play someone from, at least as the slate stands now, where the Utah Jazz have three really very underpriced guards with Donovan Mitchell out of the lineup. I think the guy that I like the most right now is Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 3,100, but Mike Conley's a good play. Jordan Clarkson's a good play. I do imagine those two guys in the 5,000s, though, are going to be really popular. So Alexander-Walker sort of gets you leverage off of those two players. If one of them gets in foul trouble, doesn't play well, the game's a blowout, any sort of thing like that, Alexander-Walker would be the clear beneficiary there. So I think if more people play Conley and Clarkson, you go with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But one of these guys at least is going to be very good just because of how much usage opens up with Mitchell. And then also Bojan Bogdanovic is also out for this team. So I think you do have to play someone on Utah if it's one of these three. I like Alexander-Walker, but it could really be any of them.
Yeah, NAW, $3,100 and projected for north of 20, 25 points in that vicinity. Jeff, what about you? Is this also a pay down spot?
Yeah, not quite as far down as Matt. I like the value on Tyler Hero at 7,400. The Thunder really struggle against everyone, but specifically guards, ranking 26 in DK fantasy points allowed to them. Hero has scored 42 plus fantasy points in back-to-back games, and the Heat really give him the keys with the second unit. He's seen a usage rate of 28% or higher in 6 of his last 8 games. On a Miami team that doesn't score a lot, Hero is a huge help off the bench. He ranks second on the team in points per game, only behind Jimmy Butler. Speaking of Butler, he's questionable tonight with a right ankle sprain. If he's unable to suit up, that makes Hero even more enticing.
Let's go to forward. Jeff, we'll stay with you. Some interesting options here as well. Kevin Durant, a clear favorite. He's going to be pretty chalky tonight, I imagine, as well. Jason Tatum, that one could turn to a blowout in Sacramento. I kind of want to swallow my tongue when I say this one, but R.J. Barrett is in a good spot tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, Adam, I'm with you. I'm a Celtics fan, but I like RJ Barrett as well at 7,900. He's really stepped up since the All-Star break. He's seen a usage rate of 29% or higher over his last 10 games and has played 36 minutes in each of his last 5. Without a true point guard, playmaking duties have fallen on him, and he's answered the call. The matchup isn't ideal, as Washington ranks 5th in fantasy points allowed to forwards, but Barrett's usage should make up for it. I also think that you can find elite production at a solid price if you're willing to pay up a little more in Pascal Siakam at 8,900 against the Lakers. Siakam has shown consistent aggressiveness lately that we haven't seen from him in a while. He's racked up 52 plus DK fantasy points in 4 straight games. One of those performances coming against the Lakers, also seeing a usage rate of 27% or higher in all of those contests. LA has been absolutely putrid defensively as of late, ranking 27th in defensive rating over the last 10 games and 27th overall in fantasy points allowed to big men.
Maddie, is this where you give me like Corey Kispert or PJ Tucker? Or are you going to spend some of that $50,000 salary?
I think I'll spend a little more, but first, this mutual respect between New York and Boston. Some people might find it gross. I think it's very heartwarming. It's nice to see. But I'm going to go to Atlanta, actually. I'll just go way away from both of those cities and go with the Hawks situation where Danilo Gallinari is questionable and Trae Young is also questionable. So that opens up forward potential for 3 different guys. This really is similar to Utah where you can kind of pick any of these, but I'll go again with DeAndre Hunter, who I talked about earlier this week. He's still only $5,000. He's been performing really well. He's had fantasy point totals in the high 20s, low 30s. And if you take Trae Young and Gallinari out of this game, Hunter just has to play more minutes. Someone has to score for the Hawks because Trae Young not being there doesn't just mean more scoring opportunities for the other players. It's more passing opportunities for the other players. Young basically has the ball in his hands for any possession where he's on the court. So while the game will slow down a bunch if he doesn't play, you still get an increased role for all these guys. So I think Hunter just has a lot more to do, and it should still be a relatively up-tempo game going against the Grizzlies. So I think it's a really good spot for DeAndre Hunter. At
center, Matt, you've got Joel Embiid, Nick Jokic, Domantas Sabonis. How does one choose? I think you just save a little here. I mean, I like all of those plays, but I do think it's likely that Jimmy Butler does sit, as Jeff talked about. So Bam Adebayo is only $8,300, and that's just far too cheap for him in a great matchup against OKC without Butler there potentially. And if PJ Tucker, who's also questionable, Caleb Martin is also questionable, if those guys are out too, it's just a little bit more of a chance the game stays close for Bam. But I will just throw in a caveat here. I like this play a lot more if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on the court, because again, that's going to add more possessions. Not quite like Trae Young, but Gilgeous-Alexander does drive the tempo of the game, and also it's much more likely to stay close if he's playing. So I like Bam really only if SGA is playing, but I do think the Thunder, for whatever reason, when he's been questionable, they just keep playing him, even though they have nothing going on for them at this point in the season. I think he's just been playing so well, they want him out there. So I think SGA does play tonight, and I think Bam is in a good spot if Butler is out. Jeff, you've got good mid-tier options too. Christian Wood, Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I'm sticking in that mid-tier range. I like DeAndre Ayton at 7K. I think he has a lot of upside. He's racked up 40-plus DK fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games, and he's seen a usage rate of 26% or higher in each of those last 2 contests. I'm revisiting my favorite stat here as the resident Bulls hater, or at least that's what I've turned into. But Chicago's 2-15 against teams above 600. Phoenix obviously qualifies for that mark as they boast the best record in the NBA. The Bulls also rank 24th in DK fantasy points allowed to centers. So I'd expect a lot of that to go through Ayton tonight.
You guys gave us a lot of value, so we won't make you stick around and do that. We will get out of here. I'll throw out a couple more names. In addition to NAW, of course, Goga and Nick Claxton. You want to talk value centers? They're available to you. The thing is, you can only fit so many centers in the lineup. It's going to do it for this morning's edition of The Sweat. Remember, this show comes your way Monday through Friday across the DraftKings video channels, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you find us. I will be back a little bit later on today, all those same channels, with Matt LaMarca. Colin Sherwin will jump back in from Vegas. We'll break down all things NFL, NBA, and see what's going on in March Madness as well. In the meantime, just a few minutes from now, another Madden Sim. Jump on in. We'll see you.